And I said, well, what's important to you? Like, what is really important to you? What's your mission, vision, and values? And he said, I don't want any of that. And I was like, okay. And he goes, the only reason people want that is because it sits on a poster on a wall, and I don't want any of that. What's the most important question anybody can ask you, Siobhan? And I said, I don't know. How's your day, honey? If our employees can't go home and answer great every day, we failed them. We built that company from 38 employees to 1,000. We went from 2 locations to 32 worldwide. It was like my petri dish. If people are tricky, I mean, we're just complicated beings, right?
What's up, guys? We're here on the podcast with Siobhan O'Leary. She is a people strategist. She will come into the business to help you guys with growth stage businesses and transitionary businesses. Welcome to the podcast. Excited to learn more about what you guys do.
Great, thanks.
So tell us, what is a people strategist? Because I asked you that before we even started the podcast, and I'm sure people are wondering the same. So can you give a 5,000-foot view of, what is it and why is it important to a company?
Yeah, so we go in and set up human capital platforms or HR platforms. And when I say platforms, people immediately think of technology, but it's everything, right? It's the whole basket of people and culture, people operations, and strategies. So it's not only what's the foundational elements that a company needs to operate just to, pay people, et cetera, but more importantly, it's for a growth company, it's when do you hire in a COO or CMO or chief technology officer? Where are you in your growth stage, and that you need to build out your org according to what critical path? And then to dig down deeper. So it's the strategy of the growth of the org. And really, it's not about the position, it's about the work that's getting done. So we look at that at the high level, and then we look foundationally at what are the systems that you need. And we really do this in this sort of bubble of, what's the mission, vision, and values of the company. And so, I had this incredible experience, which is how I got into this so passionately, and that I had these founders of this company come to me in 13, 14 years ago, and they said, Siobhan, would you come and set up our human capital system? And I said, well, sure. How many employees do you have? They have 38. I go, you don't need me. I'm used to dealing with 5,000 employees. No, we're going to grow. And I said, well, what's important to you? Like, what is really important to you? What's your mission, vision, and values? And he said, I don't want any of that. And I was like, okay. And he goes, the only reason people want that is because it sits on a poster on a wall, and I don't want any of that. And he said, what's the most important question anybody can ask you, Siobhan? And I said, I don't know. And he said, how's your day, honey? If our employees can't go home and answer great every day, we failed them. And that's what I want you to build the platform on. So I'm telling you that story because I love it. And I'm telling you because that is absolutely a true story. And we built that company from 38 employees to 1,000. We went from 2 locations to 32 worldwide. And it was like my petri dish. It was truly every piece of what a people strategist needs to have in their toolbox. We got to use those tools thanks to those amazing owners. It was these 2 guys from Convene, Chris Kelly and Ryan Simonetti, and Ryan's still running that company. When you say what is people strategies, it's this big balloon of I don't know if balloon's the right word, but it's a framework around what's really important to the leadership team or the owner of the company that matches their brand, right? They want their external brand and their internal brand to match. And so we set up the strategy on the inside to get what they want on the outside from a brand perspective, but also from a business results perspective.
That was very well said. I think that it's hard for people to know, especially mid-sized founders, how important just the human capital is. And I've done 14 companies I failed at 8 of them. And I would say the number one reason I failed was because I just had the wrong people. And I remember even a few years ago, I remember just sitting, it was like right around Christmas, and I put out some type of thing for the team to do. And even thinking about it makes me angry, where it was once again, they dropped the ball. And I remember feeling as a founder, like I was surrounded by a den of thieves. Like everyone was there and they weren't bought in. And I realized that it was all my fault. And it was this epiphany of, I suck at hiring. I suck at discernment on finding the right people. And I had to do a real soul searching and asking myself those questions of like, what are my values and what will I be willing to put up with? And what's funny is on my whiteboard here, it says, I only work with clients and people I love. And it's a very simple filtering principle that says, okay, I'm not going to put up with BS. Your job is absolutely critical. And I think it's actually counterintuitively more important than people realize, especially as you grow up. So a question I have is, being really good with people requires great discernment because people are tricky beasts. So how did you become good at, I don't want to say judging, but reading into people to know if they were a good fit for a particular role?
So, that's an interesting way to pose that question. I mean, people are tricky. I mean, we're just complicated beings, right? I don't know. I don't know. How did I become good at it? My mother told me I was. Our mothers know everything, right? So she told me I should go into human resources, which wasn't called that back then. I think you're right. Some people are better than at others. And I'm probably a really good judge of character. And it's probably why I got into this. And then I quickly realized, in fact, I did a exec forum on this topic yesterday, that technically strong people are so important to the business. And how do we recognize their people side? And the best, it's kind of like a sandwich effect. It's the beginning and the end of the conversation when I'm interviewing is really about values. Maybe in your company, you don't call it values. Maybe you call it pillars. Maybe you call it principles. But what are the things that are really important to you? And then how do we come up with questions that we can ask to find out if those people are aligned with those pillars, principles, values, whatever it is? Because if we can hire for values, then you mitigate all 50% of all other problems. They're technically strong just by what's on their CV, right? And so you can have a few questions to suss out if they actually are as strong as they report on their resume. But if you have to develop a system that doesn't feel like a system. So you're using that intuition as a tool, just like a technical tool, like you would to find out their technical skills. So what we do is we go in and help those technical leaders come up with that system so they're more confident in choosing the people on their team. Like in your case, it's not that you don't suck, it was that you were probably asking the wrong question. We get caught up when we're interviewing into, it's almost like you get blinded by the bliss of some talent they have that you're dying to have on your team. And you get so enamored with that you forget to ask the other questions to let your intuition work for you. And so, it's a training like anything else. And the people skills training is the piece that we think, we don't need as much of. Like, if I'm going to go teach somebody to do coding, well, that's a very specific skill. And it's hard to explain that you need tools for the people leadership equally as much. And so that's kind of how we do it. Yes, I'm probably a pretty good judge of character. And I think people are tricky beings, but tricky not in a negative way. I think, everybody has something to offer. And it's just, is there something to offer the right thing for your team? And the other thing, is that you're right. If you don't have the right people in the right seat on the bus, you're never going to get the bus where you want it to go, right? I mean, and so you have to be super diligent about going, you know what, they're not the right person. I'm not saying you 86 everyone, but you certainly can go in and have really human, mature, professional conversations with people. And 9 times out of 10, they're going to be happier on another bus, right? Just treat them fairly, like allow people to be happy and successful somewhere. If you don't think they're successful, they certainly don't think they're successful. They just haven't told you yet.
Siobhan, so you guys talk a lot about, your leadership operating system. You want to tell the audience a little bit about that and how you integrate that within these companies?
Yeah. So we look at it as kind of like when you said, what is people strategies? We look at it in two ways. We first go in, for example, if we're looking at a company that's, for example, a hotel coming off of a flag and going on to another one, our cell phone, or in a merger, an acquisition scenario, or an open, a startup, we'll go in and we want to help those leadership team develop a common language. So as I mentioned, mission, vision, values, but what are leadership behaviors that are going to be our non-negotiables? What's going to be our communication style? What are we going to agree to our meeting structure to be like? So, let's get like 5 or 6 things that we agree that these are our rules of engagement with each other as a leadership team. So in our meetings, we're going to they're not going to last longer than an hour. We're going to follow this agenda, and we're going to have somebody be kind of the gatekeeper of ensuring that we're making decisions in the meeting, not figuring things out. So what are your rules of engagement? I'll give you an example on the behavior side, and then on the other side, it's what's our cadence to make sure that we're staying focused on what are our strategic priorities for the year. How are we focusing on them quarterly? And then how are we getting back on track if we go off track? And then what's happening at the year end? And so there's a system in place to tie the leadership behaviors into the strategic plan. And what's key about those behaviors being set up first is you can have really strong strategy decisions and make decisions about the business and what's your revenue going to be and what costs are you going to cut and what positions are you going to add if you don't know how to have really good productive conversations. So the leadership piece of that operating system is the behavioral. What are those rules of engagement? What's our common language? What's our decision-making tool? And then the other side is what's our cadence to stay focused on what the business actually does, and the strategy. And it works, because people want to have a structure in the soft skills that may not be their forte, which is what we were talking about earlier. I'll give you an example. In that same company I was describing to you, we built an executive team. We hired a CFO, we hired, the C-suite, and we would go into these meetings and they would last for 3 hours. And I would listen to everyone in the meeting and everyone was seemingly arguing. But the reality was they didn't speak the same language. They were arguing the same point, but they came from different industries, super smart people, some of the smartest people I've ever met. And they were arguing the same point because in different industries, we call things different names, right? Whatever it is. We read P&Ls differently. We look for different chart of accounts, whatever it is. And then all of a sudden I said, wait a minute, these are not productive meetings. We're blowing our brains out or needles in our eyes or whatever you want to call it. And so we put some rules of engagement in, and we followed this process called Yes And, which is a design thinking or improv process, because we had somebody on the team that was had worked for in the design thinking space, and she was a strategist, a future of work strategist. She was amazing. But anyway, and then we had this coach-centric approach where we asked questions. So the rule was you had to, if you disagreed with someone, you had to ask an open-ended question before you disagreed, or you had to say yes and. And what that did is it stopped everyone and they listened And then they actually heard that they agreed more than they disagreed. And it took 3 weeks, and those meetings were an hour and they were productive. And so when I talk about an operating system, I know it sounds like such a simple fix, but it's a behavioral thing that makes people stop and review the information differently. You know, if you think about it, it's like a mental spreadsheet almost. It's like a new tool you use out of your toolbox to hear information differently. And so you have to be able to have quality conversations if you want to have a quality strategy implementation.
There's something I want to add in there, which I think is relevant given the AI world we find ourselves in. So for me, I think a lot about the quality of answers from AI, right? Everyone has had a good conversation or a bad conversation with their Chat GPT or Claude or whatever they're using. And you know, one of the big things right now in the world is MCPs, which is the ability to go into others' databases with the AI to pull out the data. But the problem is that it's just like with humans. Sometimes the column in the database in one place is called a different thing. It just has a different, what they would call semantic layer. And the AI cannot make sense of the two different columns that actually mean the same thing. And if you actually just knew they meant the same thing, the AI would immediately just say, oh, I get it. And it would give you the right answer. But instead, it gives you the completely wrong answer. And it argues and it spins in loops. And you actually have to interrupt the AI and say, stop going in that 30,000 thing loop. It's actually the same thing. You're okay. And what I'm hearing you say is that humans are really no different. You have to give them common language to allow them to process information efficiently. And if you add in, unlike with AI, we get emotional. So when we think we're not, you know, we're in that fifth loop, it's like, okay, this person on the other side is an idiot. Clearly they don't understand. And it's actually just a gap in common language, which I thought was
100% true. I mean, 50% of or more of issues that companies have is in that exact issue. And look, we have to teach people to listen differently. You know, like we all are creatures of habit. Like we do what we've been doing forever. And then when we come together with different skill sets, great. Like how do we all think differently. So let's teach people to listen the same so we can understand how they think differently. And that's an asset to us.
Yeah, there's no
right.
doubt.
Yeah, I love that connection you made with the AI. That is exactly right. I might have to steal that.
Steal it. That's what I'm here for.
Yeah, steal that.
Yeah, you just have to make sure you put a little asterisk that says call Ben Reed for good quotes.
Right.
But I have a similar question though, is that you're obviously talking about behaviors, but you said something interesting earlier that I'm going to make a connection, which is you said values starts first. And I did this big video on values, which I'll send it to you. I'd love you to get your feedback on it. But the whole idea was, okay, values are the operating system and behaviors are basically the output of that operating system. And so if there's a foundationally different values, the behaviors follow from that. So there has to be an agreement on the behavior, but if you don't agree in cooperation, if that's not a part of like your core value of like, I want to get along with these people, I want to reach agreement. That's actually, I know it sounds kind of obvious, but it's a value. It's like agreeableness, reaching some type of path forward. And so if you don't have that as a base core belief, then it doesn't even matter if you have an agreement to use a solution, like open-ended question, because the core, somebody said something to me once, Jake and I went through the same program where they said, people don't remember what you say, they remember your being, which I thought was better than the way they made you felt. Because your being reflects where you're coming from, which is I'm coming from cooperation. I'm coming from truth seeking. And that's a deeper thing than just a behavior. It's the operating system behind the behavior. So I know you care about both, and I just thought it was an interesting connection.
Yeah, I love that you said that. So we do this whole, when we do values work, we do this whole thing on exactly what you said. Values drive behaviors that create the culture. Mm-hmm. And culture is like the profit line. Culture is the result of everything. Like, you know, you'll hear leaders say, we want to protect our culture. We want a really great culture. Well, okay, great. That's like saying, I want to make a profit. Like, of course you want to make a profit, you know? and so, but values drive the behaviors that get there. And I heard this podcast recently, and I feel so bad that I can't remember who the author was. But he said, she said, if you have the right values in place, and people are values aligned. And if she hears this, she'll probably, hate me for really bastardizing this. But anyway, the concept is that you want to be able to, if people really want to work for you, they're going to tap into discretionary effort. And so if you really want to,
can you say that again? If people want to work for you,
people really are totally bought into your work and what you're doing in your company, you're going to be able to tap into their discretionary effort. Like they're going to give you more than what's on the job description, right?
I love
and
that.
They're only going to do that if they're innately values aligned with you. And that's why the interview process is so important through this filter. And that's why doing the work ahead of time is like really about, what makes me tick, right? What's really important to making this organization run. And so you're right about agreement too, because agreement, I love that you said that word, because, people talk, well, in performance management, Siobhan, and accountability models, my expectations aren't being met and da, 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 da. Well, that's because your expectations are yours, not the group. Like it's not between you and a person. That's all on you. If you get an agreement is like a magic word. And all you have to do is say, what are we agreeing to? What are we agreeing to? And you could say that after every meeting. Okay, what are we agreeing to? You could say that when you start a meeting. What do we want to agree to by the end of this? When you say it, you could do it when you call Verizon when they've screwed up your bill again. Okay, what we're agreeing to is you're going to refund me 3 months. Like, it's just magic. It just is so clear. And it is two people coming together willingly for the win-win, right? As opposed to my expectation is mine and I'm shoving that on you. And the other thing you said I really liked is, people remember your being. Something we talk about is similar to that, is that people judge you by your behaviors and we judge ourselves by our intentions. And so many times, you're caught saying, well, that isn't what I meant to say. That isn't what I meant by that. No one knows what the bubble over your head is saying. No one knows what your real intention is. If you can be really clear or ask a question to understand what the other person's intention is so you can match it, right? Or whatever it is. And that's kind of like what you're saying about your being. Like, your being is your intention. So if somebody remembers your being, they were really connected to your intention, not just your behavior. And intention is really cool. And that's another thing, a tool in the toolbox is, how do you teach people to be clear about their intentions? It's another great meeting trick is, okay, my intention for this meeting is that we're going to cover why you're a people strategist, how you got into this, and what are the effects. Like, then I'm very clear on what we're going to talk about. My intention for this meeting is that we're going to talk about the 5% we're down in revenue, and we're going to talk about who is underperforming and who our high potentials are. Then everybody knows what we're talking about. And so, you can go in and you're saving yourself half the meeting time. Or even in a one-on-one conversation, right? So anyway, those are just some of the things that you tapped into my brain when you said that about being. I like that.
I think that from a management standpoint, one thing I try to do with my employees is I genuinely want them to feel like I care. And I think that part of that is, one, because I just want them to feel that way because it feels good. But two is because I know that if they believe that, and this isn't a manipulation, I genuinely have to feel it because I think human beings have spidey senses and they can tell when you're BSing. But two is, if they truly believe I have their best intention in mind, I they know that when I give them advice, it is not meant to deceive, to mislead, to put down, and they read the lens of the information through he's actually trying to help, and therefore I will be open to it. And I think part of Elon Musk has this great quote where he says the problem with the human brain is it's like a supercomputer that has the integration layer of a straw, which is our voice. Right. And so like you're feeling all these feelings right now. I'm feeling feelings. We're having all these thoughts. You're thinking about things as I'm saying them, but none of it's being translated except if the word comes out, and we have to wait our turns. So there's like kind of a one way, like I'll wait till you come out, So the number one thing I think that bridges that strange, awkward gap of human communication is the vibe. Is that, do you actually believe that there is something happening between us that is trustworthy, that's believable, that's constructive? And that comes back down to the most core being, And my last thing I'll say, because I'm going on, my mom said to me once, I'm 37. And my mom said to me when I was 27, because I felt like I over-explained myself as a person. And she said, Ben, you don't need to explain yourself. It's obvious. She's like, as soon as you walk in a room, people know. It's like trying to explain a 1,000-page book. Not only is it not possible, but it's boring and it's silly. So just be. And so anyways, that's something that I like to live
I like that. That's awesome. That's really good. Another good Ben quote. I like
that. Another
wisdom. You had a really good one that I liked where you said people don't judge your behavior, they judge your intentions. And I really I jotted that down. That was I love the one from you, Ben. I love the one that you said, Siobhan. Those are both sticking with me after this call for sure.
Good.
I love it. This was a fun chat.
Yeah, it is a fun chat. I like how connected to we do a lot with self-awareness. Like we believe the number one leadership trait is acute awareness of self and others. Mm-hmm. And so all the work that we do drive that self-awareness almost so that that's a competency. I mean, not almost, it is a competency. And when we work with startups, we work with, when they're building out their review processes and hiring and the competency models, that's one of the competencies. And the stuff that you're talking about, Ben, is like truly, steeped in how can we be more self-aware, because the only thing somebody else sees is, you're right, what's coming out of their mouth. That's the only thing they have. Sort of. I'm going to contradict myself right now because it's something like 57% of our communication is through body language. Mm-hmm. And so back to what your mother was saying, as soon as you walk in the room, everyone knows, because your body language, it gives off your energy, right? And energy is a real thing. And so if you have a lot of anabolic energy about you and curiosity, which is another one of my favorite competencies to put in competency models, then, people feel it and they see it. And so, back to our mothers are always right? So,
yeah, I guess that is a theme, isn't it? I'm going to steal your quote. It says acute awareness of self and others is a core idea of leadership. And I think that begs a deeper question, though, which is, how do you develop that? And for example, Jake and I went through something called the Ascension Leadership Academy. I've been through Landmark. I've been through the Mankind Project. I've done weird stuff to like get better in time. I've done breath work in the Costa Rican jungle. And for me, I would say that it has not been an obvious or easy journey. And I know even what's the Panda Express restaurant, the founder of that requires every single manager to go through Landmark self-development a weekend because they want the standard kind of operating model of there's stories and there's what happens and there's these ways of being more aware. Yeah. I'm wondering, what do you suggest when you're advising companies? Do you suggest that they put their leadership through some type of training like that, or what do you think?
So, well, now this is Pandora's box. So when I was with Convene, we wrote a leadership program to, make sure all of our employees could say great every day when they went home. And we wrote a leadership program, and it was based on 7 levels of energy, which is a theory from Bruce Schneider, which is a coach-centric approach that when I went through coach certification, I learned this philosophy. And I thought if I could ever build a business or a company or a human capital platform based on these philosophies, it would be just a home run. Like this would be the answer to a lot of behavioral things within organizations and an organizational behavior nirvana. And it was. And so it's the 7 levels of energy. So that create this opportunity, this scale for people to immediately be aware of either themselves or other people. And there's no right or wrong on this scale. Like each level has a advantage and disadvantage to it. And the mastery is choosing how you want to respond to a situation to get the outcome you want. And so we use that as part of our leadership development tools to teach people self-awareness. To answer your question, I'll give you an example. So level 1 is victim, level 2 is fighter, level 3 is compromise, level 4 or tolerate, level 4 is serve other people, level 5 is win-win, which is kind of where we sit in the business world within those 5. But level 6 is really where we can talk to a lot of the C-suite. A lot of our C-suite leaders are at level 5, 6 constantly because they're visionaries. When you're having conversations with them, they're 3 years down the road. Like, and when I talk to mid-managers or even senior level people that aren't in the C-suite, they talk about, the CEO came in and they asked me these questions and it confuses them because they think they're asking him this, but they're asking him rightly so, because whatever information they're giving them might be what's on the ground now, but they're using that to make decisions for the business 5 years down the road. And so when we talk about this in business, and I've had people in the C-suite tell me this is an amazing communication strategy, like for negotiations, or because if you can read where someone else is resonating, if you see somebody's coming in as a fighter or in victim mode, you're going to change your communication style or your word choice because, if you can quickly pick that up. So it's an awesome tool that we use when we're teaching self-awareness as if that's a competency or to drive it. And then we do a lot of work with open-ended questions to be able to get to where are they on that scale. It's also super objective. So technically strong leaders, they want a tool that's really easy. And so they can say, you know what, Jake, why are you coming at me at a level 2 today? Like, what happened to you, man? Like, where's our level 5? And so immediately it takes the me against you out of it. And you're talking about our tool that we've agreed on as part of our operating system. And then you're like, Jake can then choose, okay, I'm going to stop arguing. You're right. I did come off a little argumentative. Or maybe he's going to go, because you dropped the ball again, whatever it's going to be. But it's a great way to call things out. And it's a quick and easy tool that technical leaders can use.
Can you run through the levels again real quick?
Yes. It's one is, and this is like a really abbreviated version. 1 is victim, 2 is fighter, 3 is tolerate, compromise, manipulate. 4 is serve other people. 4 is the level that the person that volunteers for everything. I'll do it. And then all of a sudden they're exhausted and they're like, why does everybody dump everything on me? Because you always volunteer. They get like so much joy out of doing things for other people that those people. And so I'm kind of putting a negative twist on these energy. And 5 is win-win and 6 is visionary. 7 is like when you manifest things. 7 is like, if I just think it will happen. And if you've done breath work and all the things you mentioned, you know exactly what I'm talking about.
Yeah, exactly.
It's just in business, we can't talk about that one very much because people would just stand there and do nothing and, manifest their work. And in the hospitality space, you can't manifest that somebody's bussing the table. Like, it just doesn't happen. So, but, and the other thing I love about this work is that it doesn't matter from a socioeconomic position or an education level. This this is relatable and relevant to anyone across an organization. So I don't care if you're part-time labor with English as a second language or the CEO. We all are very clear on when we're angry, when we feel like a victim, when we're going for the win-win, when we feel really empowered, when we're serving other people. And it's how you're applying that in your work, because we all do all of those things. And the mastery is choosing, when we want to do it. So yeah, we wrote this leadership program. We won some awards on it. We were top 5 globally in this with this award from the International Coach Federation. And I was really, we saw the results, and so we just use it and we adapt it to the industry or adapt it to whatever the company's going through, or the individual coaching, and so, because we're only one person. I mean, people go work-life balance. Well, you only have one life, so you're not balancing anything. You're either living your life the way you want to live it and choosing things, or you're not. And so, anyway, I won't go off on that, because I have a whole thing about work-life balance. Like, we have to integrate our life. So, anyway.
So I know we're gonna start to wrap it up. Since we're all in the woo woo, we got to ask you my favorite last question, which is, aside from what you do and people strategists, if you could leave anybody listening with one piece of advice. You're going to Pluto, you're not coming back, you're going to be, very young, and everyone's going to be dead because of the time warp on the speed of light. So you're still alive, but so I don't want to say you've died, because that's too morbid. So you're still alive and you're not here anymore. What would you say? What advice would you give people based upon your entire life's experience?
Ask more questions. Just ask more questions. If people asked more questions, they'd understand more about anything. They'd have more patience. Ask more questions, ask better questions. Like, it's a powerful tool. You get curious, you get information, you get schooled, and you become less judgmental, So I think if people could ask more questions. I don't know.
Very good. It's great. Where can people find you online?
Yeah, so aubergine-partners.com. That's the name of my company. It's aubergine, which is a French word for eggplant or purple, because purple is the color of good judgment and clarity.
Oh, I like that.
And I wanted a French word because I'm from New Orleans. So and that's where they can find me. So.
Very cool. Well, there'll be show notes somewhere below, everyone. And obviously, if you need to build a team, if you need somebody who obviously has good judgment and discernment, and clearly has a whole treasure chest of principles that will help guide you, which I think is something very valuable, please do reach out. And I'm sure that she would be happy to meet, obviously, if you're a good fit. Who would you want to reach out to? Who's the perfect fit for you?
Values aligned clients. Like, you only work with people you love. We say we only work with values aligned clients. So, I don't know what that means to other people, but we do a lot of work with people, senior leaders, people in the C-suite, people that are, growing their business, starting a business. Yeah.
Great. Well, thank you for being on the show. And we will see you guys on the next podcast.
Thanks, guys. It was so much fun.
Lily.
Fun. See you in Morocco next week.
Exactly.